Hello.
Hi.
Hello. What?
Welcome to Chapter 3, and this chapter is weird. This is a weird chapter. It's very weird. Anyway, this chapter railroads you a lot harder than any of the others. Like, as soon as you accept the story mission, you're basically locked in until the chapter's over. So if we actually want to get any side stuff done, the start of the chapter is the time, which is why we accepted that mission from Melvin. And we're gonna go meet our friend Burns. Burns is one of my favorite NPCs in the game because he's one of the few characters with a relatable motivation. It's not a particularly deep motivation, but you can see the idea behind it, and he seems like a genuinely sympathetic person. Of course, since this is Beatdown, even though Burns seems like a genuinely sympathetic and good guy, you can still use him to beat the fuck out of random civilians, and he won't complain about it. Like, you figure he'd say something. So the whole story with Burns here is that a bunch of mobsters destroyed his arms and he can't box anymore. But he's actually one of the better fighters in the game, which makes it a shame you can't recruit him permanently. I mean, I get it. Just because you had your arms messed up doesn't mean you can't ever punch again. It just means you can't do extremely strenuous punching for extended periods of time. I get that. That's a reasonable excuse.
What?
But he's so good at it. Maybe that's why he's pissed. He's pissed because he was so fucking good at punching people, and all he wants to do is punch people, and he can't punch people anymore. That'd be like if my vocal cords broke. Because I just love to keep talking and talking and talking and fucking talking, and we're gonna go all the way to the hospital zone and behind the hotel next to the hospital zone. Gonna skip out the travel there, because it's just a bunch of loading screens. So I'm cutting out the travel, but if the travel's something that would bother you personally while playing the game, you can actually use taxis. I finally figured out how to do that, and you can hire car thieves to rob cars and drive them wherever you want. So that works if you don't feel like walking everywhere. But I like walking everywhere because I can beat up people along the way, just random people. So it turns out the assholes that broke Burns' arms, they're just kinda hanging out behind the hotel. Which, I mean, I guess that's as safe a place as any to hold your shady meetings. Because there's virtually no reason to come back here except for the fact that there's one lady behind the hotel that tells you can use taxis, but neglects to tell you how to do it. Anyway, this is a pretty straightforward stretch of 3 1v1 fights. The enemies aren't very smart. They're very vulnerable to our sweeping dive kick thing. Our sliding kick? That's the word. They're very vulnerable to our sliding kick and our 5-hit combo. They're pretty weak. I'm actually a little unsure if these mobsters we're fighting right now are supposed to be part of Zanetti's family, but they share the same names and outfit as people from Zanetti's family, so I don't think it's much of a stretch. One of the special conditions for this mission is that if we let Burns take out Leonard, then we get double the amount of money. I said in an earlier video that you can tag out to your buddies in 1v1 fights. That's almost true. You can technically switch to them, but in order to do that, you need to get your ass kicked. There's no way to manually switch out to your buddies. You have to lose. So basically, we have to throw the fight before we defeat Leonard, and then let Burns take him out. I looked through the instruction manual because I thought this was a little weird, but I didn't see any information about how to switch to characters, and I tried all the buttons, so I really don't think it's possible. I think you just have to lose on purpose to do that. I have a hard time believing that Raven would stand still long enough to let that man do that. I find it kind of surprising that in Zanetti's family it's apparently acceptable to just kind of fucking run away when you get your ass kicked. Apparently there's no repercussions for that whatsoever. Then again, Zanetti's character is kind of confusing, and I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, but we have a long way to go before we even see Zanetti's character. So we have to throw the fight against Leonard, but we're going to weaken Leonard first, because even though Burns is a really good fighter, he doesn't have a whole lot of health. So just in case Leonard somehow gets the upper hand, we don't want to lose this whole mission and have to start it over. I love when the enemy pulls out a weapon and we just slide kick right under them and it knocks it out of their hands. I don't even do that on purpose, it just happens. I think it's hilarious. Hilarious may not be the right word, humorous may be the right word. Okay, Leonard, I'm trying to lose. Are you actually trying to fight me? Because... Okay, do a combo, Leonard. No, press the button more than once, Leonard. Stop taunting. Leonard, if you press punch multiple times... Close enough. So, now that Leonard, in his infinite incompetence, managed to actually kill Raven finally... Well, not kill, but defeat Raven finally, we get to switch to Burns. And Burns' punch is good. Yeah, he's real good at punching. So that's that.
You ain't getting away that easy. Loser. Yo.
Alright, so that's that. The side mission's done, and we're gonna start the story mission now, because the story mission makes you run all over the fucking place, and it takes a while. Admittedly, the gimmick is kinda cute if you're actually attached to the characters you play with, but we'll get into that later. For now, we're gonna leave the bar, and go to the giant glowing marker. So there's this man in front of the bar, Hyde. We talk to him, he tells us where the story is, and he says this place is messed up, that people are just getting murdered randomly in the park, and I agree, but we're gonna fight him for no reason. I always thought it was a little odd that Hyde just sort of stood in front of the hole waiting for you to talk to him so he could give you story exposition. Granted, the game frames it more like a bit of gossip, like Hyde's just standing around waiting for someone to talk to about the recent murder. So he can voice his opinion that murder is bad. Which is a very shocking opinion. He did say it was a couple of kids, a boy and a girl, and I know a couple of people we've met who meet that description.
Follow me.
But, you know, reincorporating story elements, I don't think that's something Beatdown would do, so we probably shouldn't think too much about it. It probably wasn't hinted at strongly at the end of the last chapter either. We really shouldn't worry about that. You may have noticed that I was initially headed toward the story, but then I made a swerve to beat up these mobsters. There's no reason for me to do that other than just to do it. You don't really gain anything from beating up small fries like this, I just wanted to do it. In case you're wondering how to break out of grabs, by the way, you just mash square. And that's my kind of game mechanic. You want to break out of a grab, you just mash the hit button until you break out. Reminds me of arcade games. Yeah, you get him, Hyde. Did anyone tell you you have the most ridiculous shirt and glove combination, Hyde? Your fucking striped shirt and biker gloves, and I know you're not a biker, Hyde. I know you're not a biker because motorcycles don't exist in this universe. I haven't seen a single motorcycle in all of my playtime in this game. So I'm sure you remember the Southside Park. We spent some time there the last chapter, grinding against Matt, finding Tank and Scorpion, you know, all that good stuff. This time we're going there because of story reasons. And there's this random fucker standing in front of Southside Park. It's like, oh yeah, some kids died and an ambulance is on the way. Well, At least we know this guy's gonna get help too. You know, the ambulance is coming here for those 2 children. Might as well pick up a 3rd passenger. Now let's see what's up with this whole murder business. Now, I don't know about you, but I am personally offended that the game and this Ignacy fellow think that Raven has friends. I'm very offended by that notion. Anyway, what I meant by the game railroading you is that as soon as we leave this area, Ignacy will give us a time limit, tell us where our friend is, and we have to get there before he kills our friend. It's a cute gimmick, and I guess it gets you used to how the city's laid out, which is important. But at the same time, it feels so out of place with the rest of the game. Like, during this chapter specifically, some areas of the city are barricaded off to make you take the longest way possible to save your friends. And it's very transparent about that. I also find it incredibly bizarre that Ignacy decided to play this game with us, because there's no justification for it besides him being an evil bastard. And sure, that you can use that as your justification if you want. Someone can just be an evil, malicious, murderous bastard, but he works for Zanetti. And this can't be how Zanetti runs his operation, right? Just letting crazy people play games with the people he's supposed to kill? And Los Sombras is pretty small, so we can get from one end of the city to another in less than 5 minutes, yet Ignacy can't get there before we can? I'm not sure if he's even trying to kill the people that we're trying to save. I'm just really fucking curious how the idea for this mission came about, because the time limit's never really stressful and you can even take a few detours and still make it in time. Granted, I've played this game a lot, so I know where everything is, but there's also a giant fucking glowing pink arrow. There is a very brief attempt at justifying this nonsense in a way that tries to make Ignacy come off as strategic for pulling this bullshit, but it doesn't make any sense either. And, you know, you don't play this game for the story. The story is entertaining, not for the reasons the developers wanted it to be, that much is clear, but if you're playing this game, it's just because it's fun and how damn weird the whole thing is. That's why I'm playing it right now. I mean, I love this game. If I had to only play one game for the rest of my life, it would probably be this one, because I'm not entirely sure I would actually uncover everything playing this game for the rest of my life. There's just that much shit in it. And it's all so abstract and hard to find. This game is just so confident that people would explore it naturally, you know? This game was like, yeah, don't worry about it. People will explore our open world, and they'll find our hundreds of weird side quests and NPCs. I mean, there's only around 100 NPCs, but, you know. So this fucker Mike blocks the way to our first friend, and you can actually take a Mike out way ahead of time if you come here before you start the story. And it's kind of funny that you can do that, because Mike's clearly here to waste your time while you're trying to save your friend. But he spawns at the start of the chapter, so you can take him out way earlier than you're meant to. I'm gonna go ahead and recruit him, just cuz. Hey Mike, could you do me a favor? Would you mind taking your shirt off and giving it to Hyde, because that would fit a lot better with his gloves? Or you could just ask Hyde to give you his gloves, but then you'd have to lose that sweet ring. I don't know, one of you just needs to swap shirts, alright? So, fun story about this game. It's nearly glitch-free in spite of being an open-world, non-linear RPG, and that's mostly because of the confined nature of everything. They programmed all the NPC interactions and everything in such a way that it would be very hard for it to break, but I managed to break it. The very first time I recorded this game, I recruited Ralph, just like I did this time, but one of my other crewmates didn't like Ralph and wanted me to beat the shit out of Ralph, so we did that together.
Oh, hey.
And then this chapter came along, and Ralph was one of the people I was supposed to rescue. So I get to the cantina, where Grace was just now, and Ralph's lying on the floor unconscious. And I couldn't progress the story because I couldn't talk to his unconscious body. So the game just stopped working. But yeah, you should worry about that if one of your crewmates is unconscious before this chapter occurs. Apparently the game will just teleport their unconscious body to the location you're supposed to rescue them from, and you'll be unable to progress. So that's special. A lot of shit about this game is special, but that's special in a way that most of it isn't. Our cell phone looks old, even by 2005 standards. So do you remember how I said it was perfectly okay to take a... Remember how I said it was perfectly okay to take a detour? Well, the timer hasn't technically started yet because we're still in the same area. So we're going to beat up this guy and then recruit another named NPC called Nigel, and then we'll go on with the story. And we're going to go ahead and, after we recruit Nigel, we're going to skip a bit, because there's a lot of running back and forth in this chapter between people you need to rescue. And while there is some interesting stuff that happens because I made it happen, we're going to go ahead and skip to that stuff after we recruit Nigel. I'm really digging your shirt, Nigel. If we're being honest, I really like that shirt. Not as much as I like my shirt. But you know, your shirt says, I got this at a sports store and I don't know what it means. That's what that shirt says to me. And that's an aesthetic I can get behind, you know? I can totally get behind that. You know, Nigel, maybe we shouldn't be fighting in the street. I'd like to rethink this situation. So hey, at least when we try to strangle someone with a pipe, it looks like it's actually next to their neck, instead of us sawing their teeth off with some wood.
Ready? Follow me.
Alright, so we skipped ahead a bit to the next crewmate we need to rescue because nothing of particular interest happens on the way here. We've rescued Stark, and I don't remember Stark. I don't know who he is. Maybe he came with the blacklist. Some of the characters just come with the blacklist. But anyway, we're going to head over here to the factory. And we're going to do that explicitly because I want to show off a mechanic that I brought up earlier that we won't really get the chance to use anywhere else. Not because it's not useful anywhere else, but because I don't want to use it anywhere else. So you can go inside stores around this game to buy shit, but also some vendors will just randomly appear at points on the map. And this is one of those points. There's a lady here in the South Factory Zone that sells clothes. And we're going to make use of her services very briefly after Ignacy calls us to tell us one of our friends is in danger and blah blah blah. Why the hole, though? Like, why would he go and kill someone at the hole? I'm pretty sure Melvin could take care of Ignacy no problem. Anyway, Tanya's here. Like I said, she's a vendor, and we're going to make use of her services to buy Raven some clothes. So we just wound up buying white versions of everything Raven already has, and even though we didn't put anything on his face or cover up his head to any degree, our wanted level has decreased immensely, to the point that we can play the rest of this mission stealthily. So anyone who ever tells you that the stealth in this game doesn't work is lying. Because all I did was change the color of Raven's clothes, and we can now stealth through this entire mission. Well, the rest of it anyway. And it's also a good thing to buy new clothes because that makes your cash flow and item meter go up, which again is very important. So it's a win-win situation. It also means that we will encounter literally no resistance at all on the way to rescue our teammate at the hole. None. No resistance whatsoever. A couple of the gangsters will look at us funny, and our wanted meter will go up a couple of times, but not very much. And that's it. You can just breeze through this entire chapter if you're wearing different clothing. And that mitigates pretty much all the frustration in this chapter. If you just didn't like running from place to place, now you can run from place to place without being stopped and fighting people every couple seconds. But me, I liked stopping to fight people every couple seconds, so the only reason I'm showing off this mechanic is to prove to you that yes, it does work. And game critics were lying. They just didn't give a shit, I guess, which is all too common. Like, yeah, these guys looked at us funny, our wanted meter went up, but we just walked right by him, no problem. Now, if we were to actively antagonize them, then eventually they would get pissed and attack us, but I'm not sure why you would do that. So as we near the end of this chapter, there's not a whole much left to say about it, except it's weird. it feels very out of place with the rest of the game. Most of the other chapters are about beating up some underlings, which leads you to a greater threat, a boss fight or something, you know? That's the formula this game generally follows. You beat up some underlings and it leads you to the boss. But in this case, we're running around rescuing people, and that will lead us to the boss. I guess it's not all that different in concept, but it's way more restrictive, because in the other chapters you can choose which underlings you fight, and in this chapter you have to go rescue people at certain places all the time. This chapter's the same no matter which playthrough you're doing or how you want to tackle it, because it railroads you pretty hard. In every other chapter you can choose a different route each time through if you want. You know, interrogate a different underling, explore different parts of the city. This one's the same every time, so it's probably my least favorite to play through. And after we finish this chapter, we'll be almost halfway through the game, by the way, almost halfway through. Alright, so through the magic of editing, we've teleported to the North Factory Zone, which is where the construction site is. And we're just going to walk past all these mobsters that were stationed to stop us, straight into the construction zone, and rescue our final friend. Now, if walking past all of those mobsters clearly stationed to stop us doesn't convince you the stealth mechanics work, I'm not sure how to help you. But yes, they work. Hey Patrick, I remember you. We're not going to need you right now, though. We're actually not going to need any of our friends right now, but we're going to keep them with us, because it will demonstrate something about this next boss that's completely unique to this boss battle we're about to go to. I know it's 2018 right now, and I can't go back and change all the objectively wrong critical reviews that say the stealth mechanics don't work. So it may seem kind of pointless that I'm telling you that all those critics were wrong, and all those consumers were wrong. But they were wrong, and I'm right. And you know, it's perfectly fine if you just don't feel like bothering with the stealth mechanics. That's okay. But saying they don't work, or that the stealth goes away too quickly, that's just wrong. Alright, Ignacy says our final game takes place in the subway station, and I'm glad it's our final game, because we've had to run all over the city at this point. The thing is that after this chapter, it just kind of goes full blast, too. Like, everything after this chapter feels like endgame stuff, even though there are still 4 chapters left. Everything in the story after this chapter feels like endgame stuff, is what I'm saying. You can still explore the open world all you want, and you should, because that's the fun part. But everything in the story after this chapter already feels like endgame stuff. If you just rush through the game, this is an incredibly short game. But if you explore this game and play it just to have fun dicking around, it'll take about 5 hours for one playthrough, and if you want the best ending, which requires all 3 bars to be full, it'll take about 10 hours. If you want to explore absolutely everything the game has to offer, again, I estimate that's over 100 hours of gameplay. The requirements to get the Godfather ending, which is the best ending, may seem really absurd by themselves, but actually 100%ing the game is a far more absurd task, and I doubt anyone has ever done it. Maybe someday I'll buy the official strategy guide, and I'll look at that to see if it actually has all that information. Because this is back when strategy guides got published for fucking everything, and GameFAQs wasn't as popular. It was rising in popularity a lot by this point, but you know, no matter how shitty or unpopular a game was, it got a strategy guide from somebody. Before we go fight Ignacy, we're gonna heal ourselves real quick, because Ignacy's pretty tough. Just like Fatima, I have a way harder time fighting Ignacy than some of the in-game bosses.
You're even stupider than I thought. How could you walk into so obvious a trap? Blinded by rage, eh? You must really be angry to have made such a mistake. You're all by yourself now. You can't call for help. On top of that, this place is perfect for my fighting style. I can hardly wait to hear your screams of pain. Show me your purest form, brought to your knees by agony and suffering.
So the music composed for the cutscenes in this game is just way too fucking good for what actually happens in the story. Like, especially later in the game, the music gets so emotional and it's clear they wanted you to be really invested in what was happening, but you just fucking can't. Anyway, as for Ignacy, he has a couple of moves that really fucking hurt. One of them he leaps in the air and comes down on you like a flea man, and one of them he does a dive towards you with his weird claw things out. Both of those hurt a fucking lot, and it only takes about 2 hits from those to kill you. So the way I deal with Ignacy is staying as close as possible, since he tries to use those attacks when you're at a distance. And when I'm as close as possible, I use grabs all the time, because he's not great at getting out of grabs. And that's about it as far as strategies for Ignacy go. Just stay close and use grabs. Yeah, I know it's not brilliant, but it's effective. Ignacy was absolutely right about this place being perfect for his fighting style because all of his damaging moves are best used at a distance. He also likes to block a whole fucking lot. I mean, usually for boss battles I prefer to grapple instead of punch anyway. But he blocks a whole fucking lot.
You're stronger than I thought.